Okay, hello everyone and welcome to this 1-hour webinar, Flip It Instead of Flipping Out. You can transform challenging behavior. My name is Rudy Abello, Marketing Specialist for the Devereaux Center for Resilient Children, and I will be your moderator. I am here with your presenter, Early Childhood Mental Health Specialist and National Trainer for the Devereaux Center for Resilient Children, Rachel Wagner. We are both thrilled to have you all here with us today. Before I pass it over to Rachel, I'd just like to address some housekeeping items. Please know that this webinar is being recorded and that the recording will be sent out to all registrants 24 to 48 hours from now. Certificates will be provided to everyone who registered for this live webinar session. They will be sent out to all registrants in the same email that will have the on-demand recording. If you need technical help during the webinar, please let me know using the Q&A section. If you attempt to request help in the group chat, as you can tell, there's a lot of activity there, so I most likely will miss it there. So if you need help, or if you have any comments or questions you might like kept private, the Q&A is the place for that. Entries there are seen only by myself and Rachel. The group chat is meant for interaction with everyone. Again, please be sure that if you'd like the entire group to see your messages, to select the category of sending it to all panelists and attendees. If you have it set to all panelists, that's really only being sent to Rachel and myself. So just make sure in the chat you're sending your messages to all panelists and attendees. Please know that technical difficulties are always a possibility. If they should happen to you, you can just try closing out of the webinar and logging back in with your same entry link. You might need to try a different browser or maybe a different device. And just know that should worse come to worse, you will be getting the recording of this webinar session. Any handouts or resources that are referenced will be linked in the chat by me. The handouts, actually, the handout available in English and Spanish were linked in the reminder emails for this webinar, but I will be entering the links to those in the chat in just a moment. So I think I covered everything I wanted to cover. So Rachel, let me make sure I can give you the share property. So I'm going to stop the share for a moment. And you should be able to take it now, Rachel.
Thank you, Rudy. Let's get situated. Hello, everyone, and welcome. I can see you are checking in the chat. Please continue to do that. Also, just give me a minute to make sure that all my technology is the way that I like it so that my visual plane is clear. All right. One more second. Hi, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Good to see you all today. I hope you're doing well wherever you are and that life is being graceful and kind to you. We have a big group today, and so I saw some questions related to our webcams or microphones going to be on, and for 1 hour with a group this size, we will not be having anybody sort of coming on live besides myself. So please, if you want to interact, please do so in the chat, as Rudy mentioned. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So let's get started. You are here for a 1 hour overview of a strategy called Flip It. It is a 4-step strategy to support young children who are exhibiting behaviors that we might find challenging. I am so grateful that you found an hour in our hectic lives to spend with me today. So thank you so much. Feel free to check into the chat. I'd love to know your state, your role, and if you could put in a feeling word that describes your current state of mind, that'll get us warmed up for a little bit about what this strategy is all about. So if you haven't already checked in your state or your position or your state of mind with a feeling word, hungry, cold, excited, happy, calm. Oh, tired, ready. I love it. I agree. I know blah is actually a feeling for sure. So is meh, right? Hello, Florida and Arizona and Pennsylvania and North Carolina and Washington and New York. It is good to see you all and see how you're doing. The chat moves so quickly that I will not be able to catch everything that's going on, but we will try to take moments to breathe and take in some of the chat. You all can multitask and read the chat while I keep the show rolling. So here I go. You don't really need double my face, but my name is Rachel Wagner. I am from the Devereaux Center for Resilient Children. I work as a national trainer and an early childhood mental health specialist. I think the most important things for you to know about me are that I started my career as a preschool teacher. I fell in love with children who used behaviors that were really tough and decided to get a degree in social work so that I could blend my love of early childhood with my love of mental health. And I really was fortunate to be on the ground floor of what we now know as early childhood mental health consultation. So about 20 years ago, I became one of New York's very first early childhood mental health consultants, and I'm joining you from the Syracuse, New York area. I see some friends actually from Syracuse here. It's good to see you. Welcome, everyone. And I have 4 fantastic kids, and 2 of them are in this house right now. And I know that many of you are in similar situations where you're joining this webinar from not the most common spaces that we're used to. And so we are in a lot of new and challenging environments. And so again, I thank you for being here with me today and for finding a way to make some space in your life to join me. I'm so excited you're here. So the topic today is going to be Flip It. And the way I'd like to go through this 1 hour, I could spend a whole day doing Flip It. So I'm going to give you 1 hour, the highlight reel. And I'm going to start with the story of how Flip It began. I'm going to give you like the Flip It overview or Flip It 101. We're going to take a closer look at the F step of the FLIP acronym, and we'll take a closer look at that one, which is the feeling step. And then we're going to do a quick view of the L, I, and P, given the time that we have. And I'll try to take a breath by the end. And if there's any questions that come through, I will make sure to try to answer them. But I guarantee that I won't be able to get to all your questions in our 1 hour, given the size of this group. I'm so excited you're here. So let me ask a couple things of you. The first thing I ask for folks who come to learn about Flip It is to be critical. I think it's really a wonderful thing to be a critical thinker. And if anyone stands in front of you or sits in front of you on a webcam these days in their yoga pants, you are, I think, responsible for being a critical consumer of information. And if anyone's telling you, hey, I've got a strategy that's going to work, we should be skeptical. We should try to poke holes in it. We should really try to challenge it. Because I believe that the more that we challenge something and we try to poke holes in it, the better it stands up, the more likely we will be to use it. So I encourage critical thinking. I welcome it. I also ask for open-mindedness, and I think you can be both a critical thinker and open-minded. I ask that we honor each other. I know it won't be hard for a group of people like us to do that, but I want to acknowledge this time in our history, this moment of a pandemic and a demand for racial justice in this country, and a whole lot of natural disasters and an election season, and that each one of us is uniquely positioned to be experiencing this moment in our own ways that are hard and maybe beautiful, but also overwhelming. And so I want to just acknowledge each one of you in this moment and ask that we honor each other in the chat. We don't all have to agree, but we hopefully can give each other grace. And I encourage questions. I won't be able to get to all of them. And so I want to just bring your attention to our website, which I don't want you to go to now, but moreflipit.org has an FAQ section that answers pretty much every question I've ever been asked over the 18 years that I've been teaching this. And so if I don't get to one of your questions, it might be able to be discovered on the website. So let's dig in. I want to tell you the story of how Flip It began. Flip It began 18 years ago, maybe 19 now, I'm getting old. with a little girl who I will call Haley. She was 4 years old when I met her. I was working in a therapeutic preschool program. The criteria to come to our therapeutic preschool was you had to be expelled from 4 other preschools before you came to us. So it was a pretty intense environment. The kids who came to our program really weren't able to be successful in any other programs. And so, I'm sorry, you had to be expelled from 3 other preschools. Haley had been expelled from 4 other preschools before coming to us at therapeutic preschool. We were a well-funded program. We had great therapists. We had great special educators. We had great ratios. We had everything that could be ideal for being experienced a great deal of trauma in their lives. We know that Haley had experienced a great deal in her first 4 years of life of abuse and neglect. And we knew that she was in the foster care system, and she was actually in her 3rd foster care placement because her first 2 placements had to let her go because of her challenging behaviors, because she was quite violent and aggressive. And so I will just describe a little bit of her personality and some of her behaviors by letting you know that every morning when I came into work, and I worked close at therapeutic preschool, so the kids were already there when I got there, and I walked in the door every morning, and wherever she was in the room, when I walked in, she'd look at me and she'd look surprised. It almost seemed like she was shocked that I came back, which I think many of us know that kids who have had many disrupted attachments are sometimes surprised that we come back again and again. And so she'd look surprised, and she'd pop up from wherever she was, and she'd march over to me, and she'd put her little hands on her hips, and she'd look way up at me. And for those of you who haven't met me in person, I'm 6 feet tall. So she'd look way up at me and she'd go, "Rachel, what are you doing here, you fat, feeble female?" Fat, feeble female. There was another F word in there, but I'll leave that one out as to not offend. But that is how she greeted me every morning. Fat, feeble female. And then she would kick me or slap me, or her favorite thing to do was to try to rip my bleeping eyeballs out. She would literally, and she had nails, and she would just go to claw and sort of rip my eyeballs out. And she didn't just do that to me. She did it to her peers and to the other folks in the room. She really struggled to regulate throughout her whole day. So we were seeing sort of explosive moments from Haley about every 5 to 10 minutes of every single day. And we didn't just have Haley, we had 11 other kids who had difficulty being successful in any other setting. So we had a lot of kids who were really a handful. And I'm going to tell you again, we were well-funded, well-staffed, well-trained folks with really good intentions. And we felt like we had tried everything. But most days we just felt like we were sweating. Like most days we just felt like we had been beat up literally, and that we were chasing kids and just managing and putting out fires and just sweating. And when I say this in a room full of people in a live session, everyone nods their heads because they know that feeling of just putting out fires all day. And we really were at our wits' end. And then my boss showed up with this blue box that said DECA. And I know many of the friends here on the line are here because they're DECA users. And I will give the disclaimer right now, you do not have to be a DECA user to use Flip It. I just want to give credit where credit is due. My boss showed up with this blue box and she said, "Rachel, I just went to this fantastic training. It's called DECA. We're going to do DECA. It's going to save our lives." And you know what I did? I was critical. I was very skeptical of this DECA thing, and I ignored it because flavor of the month. We've been in this field long enough to know that things come and go. This will go. And so I ignored it for a while. And then she kept saying, "Rachel, just open up the blue box and do a DECA. Just do a DECA." And so if for those of you who are not familiar with DECA, DECA is a 38, the preschool at least, is a 38 item assessment that looks at resilience in kids. It looks at children's social and emotional well-being. And I did my very first DECA on Haley, and the results of her DECA, the strength-based tool that looks at a child's initiative and their self-regulation and their attachments, didn't tell me anything I didn't already know, but it helped me focus in a way that I hadn't focused. And the assessment came with a strategies guide. And I started reading the strategies guide from cover to cover in bed at night after my weary days. And the Flip It strategy really revealed itself to me from reading all this other great evidence-based stuff. So I'm going to tell you that I want to give credit to the DECA program because it was their strategies guide that really crystallized this 4-step strategy that is nothing new. It is just organized in a way that makes sense to my brain and hopefully a lot of other folks' brains. And so as I was reading this guide, I realized that when kids are having a difficult moment, they're having a feeling. And it is not our first reaction always to acknowledge that feeling. We often talk about behavior instead. And so the first step I thought we really needed to start doing with Haley and all the other kids in our program was to talk about feelings. If we want kids to change behavior, we have to get to the root and we have to talk about feelings. But then it's okay to have a feeling. It's not okay to punch somebody. So feelings have to come with limits. And as adults, we know this, right? That's called adulting. We have feelings all the time that we don't act on. We have feelings all the time that we contain within limits of what we consider appropriate behavior. We do this as grown-ups, some of us better than others. We cope with this idea of feelings and limits, but for little ones, that's really hard. And so once we have a boundary, which also helps kids feel safe, we need to move on to inquiries where we ask kids to think. I'm a little worried we're not doing enough of that these days. And so the inquiry is a chance to ask kids open-ended questions that engage them in problem solving. And then the prompt is, of course, where we can offer our strategies, some suggestions, some different options for alternate coping and so on. So this is nothing new as you're hearing it. But what I want to sort of point out is that while we know all of this stuff, we may not do it in this order. And we may have ones that we lean on more than others, one step that we lean on more than others. And as I travel around the country and I work with teachers and I work with parents and I work with mental health professionals, I find we do a lot of L and a lot of P. Don't do this instead. And we kind of miss the F and the I. So let's get back to Haley. Haley would kick me or bite me or scratch me or try to rip my bleeping eyeballs out. And we all agreed we were going to start to follow these 4 steps. Myself, the other therapists, the other teachers, and her foster parents. And what we decided was we were just going to acknowledge feelings. So I blocked as she tried to rip my eyeballs out. And then I would say, "Oh my goodness, Haley, you are so mad." And I said it like that. And you don't have to talk like me, but you do have to talk about feelings. So I wanted to mirror a little bit of what I was seeing on her face because I thought that would help her connect a little more, but we can do this in lots of different ways. There's no one size fits all. So I would say, "Oh my goodness, Haley, you are so mad." And then I'd give her a limit. Remember, we agreed we're going to keep each other safe. Those were our classroom rules that she had agreed to. So the inquiry, check this out, was this: what can we do with your mad? What can we do with your mad? And if you want to in the chat box, you can tell me only healthy things you do with your mad. What do you do with your mad? What's your healthy coping strategy for mad? And you're welcome to type that in the chat box. I'm always curious what grown-ups' healthy coping strategies are for their mad. But again, I think what we'll see in the chat box is one size doesn't fit all. Somebody's music is another person's walk, is another person's bubble bath, is another person's calling a friend, is another person's reading, or doing deep cleaning of your house, or doing yoga, or exercising, or breathing, or meditation, right? I'm seeing all of these coping strategies, and I said healthy because I knew what some of us would put in, right? We put in eating or drinking or shopping excessively because we know that when we have strong feelings and we don't have healthy coping skills, we tend to develop some bad habits, which is what's happened with Haley, right? And so it's not going to be one size fits all, but she didn't know what to do. I said, "What can we do with that mad?" And she didn't know. So we had to move on to prompts. And one size will not fit all. So I said, "How about we try to blow some bubbles to take some deep breaths?" And you know what Haley said? She said, "Bleep off." Prompts aren't easy, my friends. taking deep breaths was not going to be her thing. So it's okay that we have to go back to the drawing board and offer her a couple other prompts. So I said, how about we take a walk? And she said, no, bleep off. I said, how about we squeeze some Play-Doh to get your mad out? And she said, no, bleep off. So I said, well, can I rub your back? Maybe if I rub your back, that'll help you calm down. And she said, no. But she didn't tell me to bleep off. So I kind of knew that we were maybe onto something. But again, kids who have a lot of trauma and a lot of attachment issues have a really hard time accepting touch sometimes. And so I said, well, how about I roll a car on your back? And she still said no, but she seemed open. I said, well, what about if we got out lotion and you rubbed your own hands and you got your lotion rubbed into your hands to get your hands nice and calm and peaceful? And she said no. And I said, how about I brush your hair? And she said no, but I knew this is what she needed. And I believe the better you know your kiddos, the better you'll be able to prompt them. And so I kept offering physical touch because I knew that she didn't get it when she was little. She didn't learn how to co-regulate or self-soothe. And so she needed this. And so one day I was just sort of desperate. Can I rub your back? Can I roll a car? Can we do the lotion? Can I brush your hair, scratch your head? No, no, no. And so one day I finally said, Haley, can I scratch your feet? And lo and behold, she said, yes, lucky me, right? So tip number one, don't offer a prompt you can't live with, because if you have foot issues, don't offer this one. So this is a prompt I could live with. I'm happy to offer this. But she kind of thought it was funny, and she took off her little socks and she gave me her little feet. I started to scratch the bottoms of her feet and she fizzled, like it calmed her right away. And I thought to myself as I sat kind of far away at her feet that she's a genius, right? Because she got the touch she needed without having to get too close to me, right? So feet was a pretty safe place to start. So now we have a strategy that works for her. And so every flip with Haley sounded like this. She would get angry. We would still have to block to keep ourselves safe, right? But then we would say something to the effect of, oh my goodness, Haley, you are so mad. The limit, remember we agreed we're going to keep each other safe. The inquiry, what can we do with your mad? And the prompt, how about we try scratching those feet? And we did it again and again and again, because this isn't magic, folks. This takes consistency, love, patience, and time, but it's worth it, right? So we did this again and again. Teachers, therapists, her foster parents were a lovely elderly couple and older couple. They weren't elderly, older couple, and who were really getting, she was giving them a run for their money. And we all started to do this. And she eventually started accepting more touch. But after a while of consistency, all I would have to say is, oh my goodness. And she'd be like, I know. And she'd take her socks off. And I'll never forget the day that I was running a circle time and I had a choice to call on a child, and I chose to not call on her. And I knew that this would probably make her very mad, and that in typical Haley form, she would charge me. So I didn't call on her. And she popped up out of her seat and she looked like she was going to charge me, but instead she turned her little body around. She walked over to the cozy area. She laid herself down in the cozy area, gave herself a nice fluffy pillow, took her socks off, put her feet out, and she waited. She waited 20 minutes because in real life, I couldn't get to her. And I think we all know that this is a reality, right? We can't always do this in every moment. And I want everyone in this room, in this virtual room, to be gentle with themselves. But I got to her 20 minutes later and I started scratching her feet, and the idea of scaffolding occurred to me, right? That Flip It is actually a learning process, and that we have to offer a lot of support initially, but that eventually we have to help kids do this on their own. So I went out and I got her one of these. And I introduced it like it was the coolest thing ever, because I knew that this had to replace one-on-one time with me. I taught her how to use it and to scratch her own feet, and she practiced and she loved it. And Miss Haley started scratching her own feet. And Miss Haley went to kindergarten with a foot scratcher, and a kindergarten teacher who was willing to use it because she had heard about Haley was terrified. And Haley made it through kindergarten, and Haley made it through first grade and made it through second grade. And in second grade, those foster parents moved forward with adoption. And I'm not going to tell you her whole life was perfect or easy, but I will say that being able to focus when I'm sweating was a gift that I gave myself. I'm not sure that it was Flip It or DECA or any one thing that sort of helped to write the course, but it did help me to focus. And so I know a lot of you are here because you have your own Haley, and I want you to go ahead and share in the chat what are some of the challenging behaviors that you have experienced from your Haleys in the world. And I hope maybe you're not dealing with such extremes, but what are some of the challenging behaviors that you are experiencing? The kids, yes, Teresa, are having a hard time with those transitions and picking on others. Dominique, I see this, and Rachel hurting others without empathy, throwing chairs. Blanche, I see you. Rebecca's got the hitting, kicking, all of those, all the aggressions and the biting, and again, the transitions, screaming, hitting, refusals of all kinds, oppositional stuff, shutting down stuff. Boredom stuff is a new behavior, right? A new experience for a lot of our kids that are really struggling. Spitting, biting, throwing things, destroying property, temper tantrums. Keep loading them in. I'm getting a little overwhelmed, but I think that the reason that I asked this question is because we have people from many walks of life from all across the country, and you're not alone. And we're all sort of coping, and probably now more than ever, in compounding situations where we're seeing kids who are really struggling. And we're seeing a lot of behaviors that our kids are letting us know that they're struggling. So I appreciate you sharing these. I hope that as we continue our conversation, you will see some ways that Flip It may be helpful, or parts of Flip It may be helpful, and also to know that it isn't necessarily the one cure-all, but I hope that you'll hear some possibilities. And so there is a 6-page handout that we have made available. We'll make it available again. Rudy just put it in the chat box. It is a 6-page handout that covers most of the stuff that I'm about to say. And so what I want you to know is that Flip It is most certainly in my 101 overview, and it is most certainly a targeted intervention. It's for those kids who are like Haley or less than, but who have risk factors in their lives. But I hope that you also hear that Flip It is for minor challenges, for everyday conflicts. And here's what I hope you see, especially for you classroom teachers out there, for those of you who are doing group care. If you use it for the little stuff, you'll be ready for the big stuff. So use it for, he took my seat, Flip It. Because when he throws his seat, you'll be ready. And if we can use it during those sort of minor moments, it really helps us be ready, but it also helps the kids start to feel that calm from you, that you are focused and that you have a plan. A couple things to know about Flip It is that it is best practice made simple. It is nothing new. It is everything that is old, wise, and well-researched, just packaged in a way that will hopefully be memorable. I'm just a kid with a learning disability who read a lot of good stuff and needed to put it in a format that my brain could hang on to when I was being called a fat, feeble female. I needed to have something that my brain could really gravitate to. So it's best practice made simple. It is strength-based, it's common sense, it's effective, it's portable, it's easy to remember, it's easy to share. It is just as much a home strategy for families as it is a school-based strategy for teachers. It is applicable in a variety of situations. It is 4 simple steps, and it is supported by the research. Now, there is an extensive literature review that supports each one of the steps of the Flip It process. And in 2016, we had a wonderful research study done where caregivers were trained in the one-day Flip It training, and then they tracked sort of what happened with their kids as time went by. And what the research found was that children's within child protective factors. After their caregiver went to 1 day of training for Flip It, that the protective factors steadily increased and that the behavior concerns steadily dropped for the 6-month period after the training. The study also found that the caregiver-child relationship steadily improved over a 6-month period. 100% of participants reported positive outcomes, and 92% indicated that they felt like Flip It fit into what they were already doing. So if you are out there and you're using conscious discipline, or you're using the second step curriculum, or you're using other great stuff, Flip It plays nicely with all of those things. It's just one simple strategy that complements bigger programs and bigger models. And so when people hear it's 4 steps, they're like, that's nice, Rachel, but I don't have all day. How long does it take to do a flip? And I say it usually takes 1 to 10 minutes, of course, depending on the situation. And if you're flipping a teenager, it might take an hour just to do the feeling step, and that's okay. But I have found in my average sort of work in a classroom that my flips will take 1 to 2 minutes. The more practiced you are, the better your flips will go. And of course, the better you know your kids. So I always want folks to know that, of course, Flip It isn't the only strategy you should use. You should use it in combination with other high quality strategies, that it is not magic. And if you have a child like Haley, that you're going to need more support than Flip It. You're going to need a comprehensive plan, which she had, that had a lot of other components to it, but Flip It was part of it. And so please, for kids who have really involved needs, reach out for mental health support, but Flip It can certainly be part of the plan. In addition to sort of the Flip It 101 that I just gave you, there's 3 things that I consider to be prerequisites. I could spend a whole day on just one of these. I'm going to spend 2 minutes on them. So know that the amount of time I'm giving them is not the justice they deserve. But these are the 3 things I think need to be in place for Flip It to be successful. We need to have a good relationship. We need to have empathy for the child. And we need to have an understanding of something that I call ick. So the first piece of this is relationships. Obviously, we all know in early childhood that relationships are the foundation of all learning, that we can only learn in the context of safe relationships, and that every strategy we use, not just Flip It, but every strategy we use is only as good as the relationship that it is built upon. So lots of times people will call me after they attend Flip It training and they'll say, Rachel, it's not working. And they'll tell me what their flip is, and their flip sounds gorgeous. They're doing FLIP beautifully, but they're missing the relationship piece. And so I'll say, let's go backwards. Let's go to the core foundation and let's look at the relationship, because we need to work on that. And then we will, of course, get the flip working. I could spend a year on relationships, but I'm going to move on to empathy. Empathy is best described as the ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes. And for Flip It, it's the ability to honor a child-sized problem. It's important for us to remember this, right? It's important for us to realize that for our kids right now, especially during COVID, our kids are experiencing all kinds of things that we might not think are a big deal, that are about screen addiction or missing friends or feeling bored, and that these things are big and they're real, and that part of Flip It is making sure we honor the feelings of children and honor child-sized problems, even when we feel as though we're sort of dealing with big things, right? And so empathy is the ability in Flip It to honor a child-sized problem. And the last thing I ask that we sort of take into consideration as we think about the prerequisites for being able to do a good flip, we have to have a good relationship, we have to have empathy, and we have to try to understand where challenging behavior comes from. And I always like to say challenging behavior comes from an icky place. And so what I really mean by ick is risk factors. It's the challenging and negative things that happen in a child's life that weigh them down. So here's my ick. And if this is Haley, this is how Haley came to preschool, right? And so we know some kids have more ick than others. We know that some kids can handle more ick than others. Some kids just get a little bit of ick and they lose it. But we know that when kids experience ick, it impacts their ability to function. And all of us have ick. We definitely have a lot of ick now, but I think even children who we would consider highly privileged or who have very few risk factors experience ick. If you turn on a TV, you're experiencing some ick that can play out in behavior, right? So we want to pay attention to the ick in children's lives because we want to get to the root of what's really going on. And so if we don't get to the ick, we really aren't going to fix anything. So know that we all have ick and know that this moment in our life right now, during this pandemic, during this time in our history, this is compounding ick. So if you had ick already, if you struggled with your health or with your finances or in your relationships already, what did COVID do? It compounded it. It made everything more magnified. It increased our stress. It turned tolerable stress into toxic stress. And so we are probably dealing and coping with more ick now than we have ever coped with. And this quote I've been sharing for years, but it means more now than it ever has before. Children haven't changed, but childhood has. The childhood experience in the last 5 years and last 10 years and the last 20 years has changed. The way we even feel about kids playing outside has changed. And now this quote means more than it ever has because the childhood experience has changed in such a dramatic and intense way. And so we want to acknowledge that when we're seeing challenging behavior, we're seeing a lot of change that our kids are coping with. So let's spend a little bit of time digging into the first step of the process. And in the handout, you'll see the definition of the feeling step, which I'm going to blow up here on the screen. Can you read just to yourself? I don't like to read for you things that you can read yourself. So go ahead and just read the definition of the first step of this process. Take a quiet moment. So as you take in this definition, I hope there's some words that jump out at you. The first word being gently, the very first word in this definition, which indicates that we need to enter into a flip calmly and kindly, gently. And if we can't do it, I lovingly say we might need to go lock ourselves in the bathroom and flip ourselves first. And I'm not kidding when I tell you that Flip It absolutely is a strategy you can apply to yourself for your own self-care. It's a strategy we can use with other grown-ups, even though it was created for little kids. But we want to be able to gently enter into a flip. I hope you also noticed that in a flip, we want to describe what we're seeing and hearing, not just the feeling. So if I knew now what I knew, or if I knew back then what I know now, I would have said, Haley, I see that your fists are tight and your face is red. It looks like you're feeling really mad. Because the more we notice a child, the more we can describe what we're seeing, the more present we're helping them get with their bodies, right? We're helping them to get back in their bodies when they may be in that sort of fired off amygdala, fight, flight, freeze mode. That noticing kids can sometimes help bring them back to the present moment. I also hope that you notice the word identify. We want kids to start having the language of feelings. They may not be able to fully understand the feeling or where it's coming from, but we want them to start to be able to name them. And we have to get to the root. And so I love this visual of a tree. I think it's a really helpful way of understanding things. Take a look at my tree. At my tree, you'll see feelings are at the root and behavior is what grows from it. So feelings are the root and behavior is the leaves and branches. And when you look at a tree, you don't see roots, you see leaves and branches. And when you look at a child, you don't see feelings, you see behavior. And if there is ick at the roots in any way, shape, or form, it grows up through the trunk and we see it in the form of behavior. We know kids who have ick usually do one of two things. They do what I call a flip in, where they hold all their ick inside and they internalize. These are kids who are under the table. These are kids who withdraw. These are kids who present with more sort of depression or isolation type behaviors, kids who flip in. And then there's kids who take their ick and they flip out. You know those kids. Most of you mentioned those, right? Most of you mentioned the kids who share their ick with the world. They come into the world just spraying their ick all around the room. And so the externalizing behaviors are what I would describe as a flip out, right? So we see flip ins and we see flip outs, and we need another choice, right? We need another option here. And so I want you to think about yourself as a grown-up. Are you a flip inner or are you a flip outer? Because both flip inners and flip outers need the same kind of help. They have just the same amount of ick most of the time. We have to pay attention to our flip inners, sometimes even more, because what happens when you hold your ick in for too long? If you hold your ick in for too long, it will eventually flip out, or it'll start to rot you from the inside. So most of us grown-ups know when we hold our ick in, what happens? Back pain, digestion problems, high blood pressure, can't sleep, right? So most of us grown-ups know that when you hold your ick in, it starts to hurt our bodies. And sometimes we see that with kids, right? We see kiddos who really struggle with tummy aches and headaches and not being able to sleep. And sometimes there's some ick there we want to explore. And so one of the biggest challenges we face is that we react to the behavior we see, and I call that trimming the tree. Use your kind hands, use walking feet. Oh, how about gentle touches? Oh, use your inside voice. All day long. Sound familiar? I talk like this. I'm just talking about behavior though. And when all I do all day is manage behavior, put out fires, trim the tree, and I just do that all day, but the roots are still there, the feelings still exist, what happens? The behavior just grows back, and lots of times it grows back even stronger than it was the day before, because when we don't get to the root, everything just keeps coming back. We have to get to the root. Managing behavior all day gets exhausting. It makes us sweaty. And so sometimes we flop in this department. We flop because we are reacting to behavior instead of responding to feelings. And so I want to just give you this example of this little one. She has taken every crayon that exists in the universe and she is snapping it into itty bitty pieces. Do you know this little kiddo? She is just snapping all of the crayons in your classroom into itty bitty pieces. Go ahead and tell me in the chat box, what's the typical response to this little girl? You walk in, you see her snapping all the crayons. What would be a typical response to this little one? Go ahead and share some of those in the chat box with me. Perfect. Tell her to stop, take them away. Those are the number ones, right? Take them away. You cannot do this. Tell her to stop. Don't do that. Maybe say, please don't. No, those are mine. Asking a why question. Oh, yes, we do all of these things. Why? Little kids aren't so great with why questions around behaviors. Try to quickly redirect. We respect each other's things, so that's one of the rules we could give. We color with crayons. Melinda, that's a very classic one that is trying to redirect, absolutely. So I hear and see all of these, and I do the same. I have 4 kids. I don't perfectly flip every moment of my life. I see things and I react to the leaves instead of the roots. And so we all need to sort of notice what comes up for us when we see a behavior, that there's roots here. So when we look at a child and we say, stop breaking those crayons, or you're hurting the crayon's feelings, or we keep our crayons whole so we can play with them again and again, or what else could you do with those crayons? Let's color with them, do that redirection piece, or would you like to try scribbling on the paper, or maybe we could find some sticks that you could break instead, or Maybe we say, we can't break crayons because we're on a very tight budget here, honey. So nope, you can't do that. And I want to just point out that these responses are fine. No self-esteem injuries here. And I want us to note that number 3, we keep our crayons whole, or some of the other sort of stating of the rules, is a lovely limit. It's the L step of this process. I want you to look at question 4. What else could you do with the crayons? Lots of us redirect and we ask those open-ended questions. That's a lovely inquiry. And that some of you might have offered an alternate sort of thing to do. Would you like to scribble or break some sticks instead? And that is a lovely prompt. And so a lot of times our first reactions are not about feelings. I saw some of you lovely folks. I see you, Susie, saying, I see that you are mad. That's what we want to make sure we do. We need to make sure that we remember that there are feelings there, that she is not doing that just to make us mad. She is not doing that to ruin our day. She is not doing that because she just wants attention. She's doing it because she's feeling some ick. And wanting attention is coming from a place of ick. It's an unmet need. And so many of us know that we try to sort of replace this idea of wanting attention with wanting a relationship. And when we see it that way, we respond differently. And so it's important for us to remember that all behaviors are feelings to be understood, that feelings are at the root of everything we see. So to get you started thinking about how to do just the feeling step, I have a few tips. My first is, this might be a hard habit to break. If you react to behavior and you manage behavior all day, it's going to be a little bit of time for you to start to respond to feelings. And I have been doing this strategy for 18 years. I have 4 kids, like I said, and I don't always respond to feelings. I do react to behavior. It's a hard habit to break even after 18 years. So I want you to sort of take this moment to just give yourself the grace and the time to work on this, and to give yourself some tools. Use some tools that will help you to remember to do this. I print the word feelings on 20 pieces of paper. I tape it up all over the place just to remind myself to talk about feelings. You should talk about all feelings. Lots of times in the flip, we are talking about sort of big feelings that are hard, but we want kids to know all the feelings. I want kids to have a rich feelings vocabulary. And so we want to talk about all feelings all the time. Use your feelings books, use your feelings charts, use your feelings beanbags, use your feelings playing cards. Talk about every character in every book you read and what they're feeling. We want to increase kids' emotional literacy. We want to keep it simple for starters, start with some basic feelings words and then expand out from there. I encourage people to just do F and not worry about LIP, just for starters. Just doing the feeling step will create change. You'll start to notice and feel something very different just starting with the feeling step. And in my ideal world, we often will teach F to teachers or parents, and then we tell them to go away for a couple weeks and try it, and then come back and learn L, and then go do F and L for a little while. So know that you can incorporate this over time. I think it's also helpful to have a lead-in or have sort of a phrase that'll get you started out right. And so here on the screen are some possible phrases. I see that you are doing blank. I wonder if you're feeling blank, or wow, it really looks like you're feeling blank. I notice you're doing blank. What is going on inside? So take a minute and look. I hope what you see here is that there's a lot of ways to do this and there isn't one perfect way. And depending on a child's verbal skills, depending on your relationship with a child, you might do more. I see the question in the chat, should you assume a child is mad? And I want us to change the word assume to maybe guess or be curious if it's mad. So maybe we might feel more comfortable saying, I wonder if you're feeling. But the better you know a child, the better their language skills are. It all really sort of depends. I would say if you have to guess, guess. Kids will tell you if you're not on the mark, but it is better to try. than to not talk about feelings at all. And so I encourage us to try and to find the way that sort of works for us. And for kids who are nonverbal or kids who are younger, I want us to think about Flip It as us lending our voice to their inner workings. And we might not always get it right, but when I was teaching my husband empathy and he would try to label one of my feelings and he got it wrong, I wasn't mad at him. I felt him trying, and feeling someone trying is way better than someone just managing behavior. So give it a shot. And so now, in the time that I have left, I told you I was going to get you into F in a deep way, get you into the feelings in a deep way, but then give you a quick view of the limits, inquiries, and prompts. If you don't get feelings right, the rest is not as fruitful. So let's do a quick look at limits. Limits is when we create the boundaries. It's when we provide children with the bar, our expectations, our boundaries. And I really think limits are love. I think limits are about making kids know I'm here to keep you safe. And that actually makes kids feel good. And I want you to think about a time where creating a boundary with a child actually increased your relationship with them. I have millions of examples of times when the limit I created safety that made it possible for relationships to grow. And so I want us to think about limits in some ways that you already know. In the Flip It process, the L should be positively worded. You all know that already. We don't say no running, we say use walking feet. We don't say no yelling, we say use an inside voice. So we're going to try to positively word our limits whenever we can. We want to keep the limits simple in the Flip. This is not the time where you explain where germs come from or why we eat broccoli or all the things. We want to keep the limit really simple in the Flip, because we should be talking about limits during calm moments too. They can be based on familiar rules. So if you have classroom rules or house rules, like we keep ourselves safe or we keep our things safe or we respect our things, this is really an opportunity to reinforce the limits that you've already introduced. I also love limits that are a little more descriptive. We use gentle touches, we use kind words, we listen with our eyes and our ears. This one's hard, friends. Check this one out. Number 5 is the hardest. It's the hardest. We want to try saying our limit without saying the word but in front of it. So listen to this. I'm going to give you an example. I wake up every morning with the feeling that I would love to eat potato chips for breakfast. I would love that. That's my feeling. My limit is I'm trying to be healthy. So my feeling is wanting it. My limit is trying to be healthy. So if somebody said to me, Rachel, oh, I know when you wake up in the morning, you really want those potato chips, you want something salty, but you have to be healthy. What does that make you feel? It kind of negates the feeling step. And so instead of saying, but you're trying to be healthy, I try to replace but with and. So I try to say, oh, you really want that, and you're trying to be healthy, because that's the conflict of life, right? Both live together in our bodies. And so our challenge is to replace but with and. Does that make sense? Replace but with and. And I think I just gave an example. So instead of saying, I see you're really mad, but we don't hurt each other, I would say, I see you're mad, and we keep each other safe. That's hard when we feel mad and we have to stay safe. Then we move on to inquiries. What can we do to safely get our mad out, right? So the and really does embrace this idea that life is a challenge, right? And then last but not least, my last tip about limits and my quick review of limits is that they should be reviewed during non-challenging moments. It should not be in a flip that a child first hears what you expect from them. We should be talking about our expectations of children all the time, right? So let's move on to inquiry. So now you have a feeling you really want potato chips and you want to be healthy. You got a limit, now what? And the inquiry could be, so what could you do to get that salty craving and something healthy in your body all in one? And that's an inquiry. So an inquiry is where we invite the brain to the game. I don't want kids to just think grown-ups solve problems. I want kids to think they can solve their own problems. So the inquiry is where we sort of give it to them. What can we do with that mad? How can we help you? And so the difference between sort of what I'm talking about as sort of open-ended question is just opening a child up to thinking. And I wonder sometimes if we're raising kids who are great thinkers and problem solvers, or if everyone just wants the quick fix these days. And it's uncomfortable to not know the answer to what you should have for breakfast and to sit in that for a while. And so instead, we want to ask these open-ended questions that create possibilities. It isn't what should you be doing right now? It's what else could you be doing right now? It's open-ended questions that invite lots of opportunities to think of outside of the box solutions, which is what brings us to prompts. And if a child can't answer the inquiry, we come in with the help because we know what to do. You know how to cope with MAD. You have great suggestions. And so here's where we provide kids with the cues and the clues and the suggestions that might help them cope better. Taking turns or taking deep breaths. We know the right answers. And so it's not until step 4 that we're allowed to reveal them because we want kids to move through their process so that they can eventually own it for themselves. Prompts can be personal examples like, when I'm mad, I really like to go for a run. Do you want to try? Or they can be using the child's strengths. You're a great artist. Maybe it would help if you drew your sad feelings. Or they should be exciting. So prompts should be more interesting than the ick. We can use redirection now. We can offer hints to different solutions. We can offer some positive choices or some suggestions. We can ask leading questions now. We don't ask them in inquiries, but now we can ask yes/no questions like, would you like to hold my hand or sit on my lap? Give yes/no questions, which is also good for kids who have less language. You can move to leading questions more quickly. And whenever possible, the prompt, the offering of an alternate solution should be tangible. Let's get scratching feet. Let's really think about sort of what we can get engaged in that is more engaging than the ick, right? And that is an important part of the process. Whew, I talked fast in my 1 hour, but I wanted to get it all in. So we were able in our very short amount of time together to walk you through the feelings, to give you a quick look at what limits are. And I'm not so worried about grown-ups knowing how to do limits, to explore this idea of asking kids open-ended questions and then supporting them with prompts or solutions or strategies, and waiting until step 4 to give them our brilliant ideas, right? So we want to wait and hold off and let kids move through this process called life, which is having feelings and boundaries and having to think of solutions and be a little uncomfortable from time to time. And so I know I probably won't be able to, in the 3 minutes I have left, get to everyone's questions, but I wanted to let you know that the website has frequently asked questions. It has a downloadable poster of the steps. It gives you information about live training and our live training that happens less, but our train the trainer experiences. And we have an online course, which I think comes in handy right now for folks who want to be able to learn on their own in a little bit more of an extensive way. So there's an online course you can take at your own pace. And so with that, I want to let folks know that we really want to create kids who can cope for the rest of their lives. And if we do it now, they'll take it with them forever. And I want to thank you for your commitment to kids and for taking the time to spend with me today. You were fantastic. And I will see if there's questions in there. If I don't get to them, check out the website. And Rudy, I know you've been watching the chat better than I have while I've been gabbing away. And so I will turn it back to you to sort of wrap us up and see if there's anything I can answer real quick for folks.
All right. Thanks, Rachel. There are actually 2 questions I left for you in the Q&A, Rachel, if you want to either answer to them directly or maybe when I pass it back to you after I close this out for everyone that needs to get out of here on time. So if you could look at those. And again, folks, if you do have any questions that you haven't asked, please put them in the Q&A. As you can tell, the chat is still, very, it's very active there. So if you have a question that wasn't answered and you would like to ask Rachel, please submit it into the Q&A. And I would like to close this out to get those of us who need to get out of here on time, out of here on time. So I'm going to close this out here. Give me one moment. Okay. So I'm sure that like many before you, you may want to learn more about the Flip It strategy. Rachel already did share a little bit about it, but there is a ton that you can learn from and grab from our website. It's just moreflipit.org. You'll find so much on these pages. Not only will you find resources available to purchase, like the book and the online course, as Rachel touched on already, you will find some that are free, which includes an on-demand webinar about Flip It that's actually designed specifically for parents and families, as well as other tools such as, posters, reminder resources, and the like. And there's also a PowerPoint presentation that's actually free as well, free for download. It's not this exact presentation, but it is a PowerPoint presentation that discusses the Flip It strategy. So there's that, and we certainly hope you will check out everything else on the website. Again, moreflipit.org. On behalf of all of us here at the Devereaux Center for Resilient Children, thank you so much for attending this 1-hour webinar. Flip it instead of flipping out. You can transform challenging behavior. We hope that you found the information useful. Please be sure to keep an eye out for the follow-up email, which will contain the recording of this webinar, links to any of the handouts and resources that were referenced, as well as your certificate that will be in the follow-up email as well. If you don't receive this email in the next 24 to 48 hours, feel free to reach out to the email address that is currently on screen. Once again, thank you so much to those of you that need to head out of here. Enjoy the rest of your day. We hope you stay safe and take good care.